Okay.
We're gonna call to order the Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries Commission meeting for June 9, 2024. If we can get a pledge of allegiance, is Major Skinner available? I'm sorry, Lieutenant Colonel Skinner available to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call, please, Madam Susan?
Brandon DeQueer,
Present.
Gene Reynolds, Andrew Blanchard, Andy Brister, Kevin Segura, Jonathan Walker, Nathan Wall. Mr. Chairman, there are 7 commissioners in attendance and we have a quorum. Secretary Sheehan is also present.
Thank you. Item number 4 is approval of the July 9, 2024 agenda. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Blanchard, second by Mr. Reynolds. All in favor? All right, motion carries. Next is the adoption of the June 6, 2024 commission meeting minutes. Is there a motion? Moved by Mr. Segura, second by Mr. Reynolds. All in favor? All right, hearing no opposition, motion carries. Next, we have commission special announcements. I want to welcome to the commission Mr. Jonathan Walker, and please feel free to provide any statement that you so choose to make.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all the commissioners and the department and the staff. Some I recognize and some I don't. I'll be honest, it feels a little weird being on this side of the room because, as many of you know, I've spent a lot of hours on that side of the room, and I see some familiar faces that have come, and I appreciate you guys' support of the ones that showed up today. Originally, I grew up in Shreveport, which is why I talk funny. Came down to LSU in 1999 and never left. I got an undergraduate degree and an MBA in finance, and if my parents wouldn't have cut me off, I probably would have gotten a PhD in something. But I grew up in Shreveport, and my mom's side of the family was actually from Monroe. So I started my hunting career in the rice fields and a pit blind in Monroe with my uncle and my cousin. And we really enjoyed some great hunts over there. I actually had a tradition with my dad where we'd wake up Christmas morning, and before everybody got up, we'd go duck hunting. And so my first present that morning, in the car, I'd open up a box of shotgun shells and shoot those that morning. So that was a cool tradition. Now I've got a wife and 3 kids, and I've properly passed that tradition along because my youngest is 9 and he turned 9 on Sunday. And we were out of town for the 4th of July, and we got out of church and ran into somebody we knew. And the 9-year-old, like any 9-year-old, said, "Hey, it's my birthday today," to just a random guy that we kind of knew. And yeah, I said, "Oh, well, what do you want for your birthday?" He said, "A 410. So it sounds like I've trained him well. But anyway, I've been blessed to have a great family and some good Christian mentors here in the business community. So I look forward to passing those traditions along and working with everybody on the commission and the staff at the department. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, and welcome. Next, we have a presentation of the IHEA Gladney Davidson Memorial Award, and this is going to be presented by Secretary Shaheen. Well, welcome.
Good morning, Commission. My name is Mitch Samaha. I'm the program manager for the Hunter Education Program. And Nolan Smith was certified 30 years ago. and he's been an instructor. As a matter of fact, I've been teaching and part of the hunter education program for 25 years. And when I first came on, Nolan actually helped train me. And over the course of Nolan's career, he has organized over 80 courses. And in the span of those 80 courses, he's certified over 2,500 students. Now, this past year, Nolan received his Lifetime Achievement Award with the department at our hunter education volunteer workshop. And by default, when the International Hunter Education Association, when they call for awards for the states, by default, our Lifetime Achievement Award winner gets submitted for that award. Nobody's ever won this award from Louisiana before. And so I submitted his name and all the data, and I was notified prior to the IHEA convention that Nolan received this award. Now, what's special about this award, it's not an award that's given every year. It's an award based upon the IHEA board's determination that this award needs to be given. It's their highest honor internationally. And it speaks volumes to the importance of volunteerism. As a hunter education volunteer, one can only hope that they can affect and change the lives and maybe save a life during the course of their teachings. Rarely, if ever, does that volunteer actually know if they've ever made a difference. But I can tell you from my experience, after teaching thousands of students the way Nolan has and represented this department in the way that he has over the course of his career, the lives that he saved are immeasurable. And the beautiful thing about being a volunteer, and especially a teacher, is that quite honestly, you live forever because the teachings that you give forth to your students are taught from family member to family member and from generation to generation. And for that, my heartfelt congratulations go to this man, Nolan Smith, for the Gladly Davidson Award, as well as the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries Lifetime Achievement Award, which he also won this year. Congratulations, Nolan.
Congratulations.
Thank you, man.
I am moved. I've been overwhelmingly blessed by God to be able to have life and longevity to teach this course over a number of almost 30 years. I'm grateful to Sheriff Weber, who allowed me and gave me the opportunity to teach this course. I'm a little country boy from Lafourche Parish. If you travel about 7 or 8 miles south on Louisiana Highway 308, you'll run across a little town called Smithtown. That's where I was raised. My father, the late Reverend Nolan Smith Sr., reared me up and brought me into a family of avid hunters. He was an avid hunter and his brothers as well. My uncles Albert and Howard were avid hunters, and when I became a teenager, was introduced to rabbit hunting. It was a tremendous experience of mine. I often would hear the beagles barking 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I would peep through my window, and I would always hope that my dad would knock on the door and say, "Son, you ready to go hunting?" There were times where I didn't have the opportunity to do so. My mom would come and console me because I would break out in a cry, because I would hear these dogs so excited to go out and get in the brush and the briars to hunt rabbits, and I had the opportunity to do it. And then as a teenager, graduating in 1983 from Central Lafourche High School, I attended Nicholls State University for 3 or 4 years and then directly went into law enforcement on January 4th of 1988. It's the day after my dad's birthday. He introduced me to law enforcement. And right around 1993, under the leadership of Sheriff Weber, I went into hunter education, became hunter education certified. What supported me in teaching hunter education, there were other certifications that I received. One was I started teaching in a training academy. I attended the FBI Instructor Development course in St. Charles Parish Sheriff's Office, where I received a number and a lot of experience teaching. And then also, I became a DARE instructor. I attended the DOT training, DARE officers training in Alexandria, Louisiana. That was held at the historic Hotel Bentley. And all these years, I've been involved in teaching and instructing. Hunter education was, of course, a passion of mine. And I want to share with this Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, throughout the whole time we were teaching these courses, Mitch Samaha was the area coordinator and the Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries biologist. I would contact him throughout this whole process. This is a very unique gentleman. He's committed. He demonstrated so much support. There was nothing that I needed as a primary instructor when I requested more hunter safety manuals or pamphlets, or I needed upgraded with some of the equipment that we had. He would always respond. If he couldn't call me right back, he would always get back in touch with me as soon as possible to make sure that these courses were done correctly. Also, I want to add to that, the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries enforcement side, I would beckon for field agents. I would request field agents to come into these courses for about 45 minutes to an hour to help to get the point across to these hunters, the importance of being a safe, responsible, ethical hunter. And the reason why I feel this was so effective was because these attendees had the first line communication with officers they were likely to run across in the field. It was Sergeant or Lieutenant Joe Arnold. He may be retired now. I think he's with Terrebonne Sheriff's Office, but he was the contact person that I would notify to request field agents that will work the surrounding area of Lafourche, Terrebonne, and Assumption. And if Joe couldn't come himself, he would direct 1 or 2 field agents to come in. They would touch on hunter regulations. They would touch on the importance of things that they would run across in the field or violations that they would commonly run across in the field with these applicants and attendees. And also, they made themselves available to answer any questions or concerns that the people that attended the courses had. Some of them were a little timid, were a little afraid because they felt like, oh, he's going to incriminate me. It wasn't about that. These guys reinforced information that we covered in the hunter safety manual that was so vitally important for them to retain, to help them to develop being a safe, responsible, ethical hunter. And it was overwhelming for me to have the network between the educational side and the enforcement side working together for the common cause of safety for our citizens. The Todd Roberts Lifetime Achievement Award, the Louisiana Department of Hunter Safety and Hunter Education Hall of Fame Award, and the International Hunter Education Association Gladly Davidson's Award. I am very honored and blessed to have been selected to receive these awards. There are no words that would adequately express my gratitude to each of you for considering me to receive these awards. And in closing, please, I want you to know, everyone that's directly connected or indirectly connected to this process. God bless you, and I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. We appreciate your dedication and work with the Hunter Education Program. All right. Next, we have the enforcement report by the Lieutenant Colonel Edward Skinner. And my apologies for that. I don't think I had seen you since we had a title adjustment.
It's quite all right. I'm getting used to it myself. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. And congratulations to Mr. Smith. What a great story. And thank you for the kind words about the enforcement division. We really appreciate that. Before I do the enforcement report, I'd like to tell you all a little bit about Operation Dry Water. Some of you guys know about it. Some of y'all are new, so I'll give you a little snapshot. So we're generally on a month lag here. We're reporting what happened in June. But Operation Dry Water happened in July, this past holiday weekend, and it is a national campaign between NASBLA, which is the National Association of State Boating Law Administrators, the United States Coast Guard, and local and state partners that come together for the July 4th weekend with the primary focus of DWI enforcement on the water. It's always on that 4th of July holiday weekend. Obviously, we had that. That's why the meeting is delayed. So we have the results of that. This year, we made 25 DWI arrests on the water, which is about 50% more than we made last year. Only 4 boat accidents in the state, no fatalities, and 2 injuries. So, of course, we would rather that number be 0 for both boating accidents and DWIs. But the trend for boat accidents is certainly down, and luckily we did not have any fatalities. And that was this past weekend, and that we will probably be putting out a news release in the next day or two to show all of those stats. So I appreciate you giving me a second to do that. For the month of June, we had 13 boating incidents, 3 injuries, 1 fatality. We had a total of 1,353 citations with 554 warnings and 35 public assists. As usual, I have a brief synopsis of some cases that were made last month. Enforcement agents cited 6 men in Plaquemine Parish for possessing over the limit of red snapper and possessing undersized red snapper. Agents additionally issued several citations for failure to possess offshore landing permits, fishing without non-resident license, and several boating safety violations. Those agents were on patrol on the Mississippi River when they stopped the vessel to perform a boating safety and creel inspection. During that inspection, agents found the men in possession of 120 red snapper, 97 of which were undersized. Agents seized all of the fish and donated them to Second Harvest Food Bank on behalf of Hunters for the Hungry. The subjects faced civil restitution totaling $3,098 for the replacement value of those illegally taken fish. A Welsh man was cited for illegally killing a Louisiana black bear in Concordia Parish and 2 counts of failing to validate his deer harvest. Agents received information that the subject killed the bear in December of 2023 and started an investigation in June. Agents made contact with the subject, and he admitted to killing the bear with a compound bow on Bayou Cogadre National Wildlife Refuge. Agents also discovered that he killed 2 antlered deer in Calcasieu Parish in October of 2023 and failed to validate either of those harvests. Agents seized 2 sets of deer antlers and the compound bow. In addition to the criminal fines and possible incarceration, the subject faces civil restitution totaling $10,000 for the replacement value of the illegally taken bear. Enforcement agents cited 2 men in St. Bernard Parish for taking over the limit of black drum and selling fish caught recreationally. Agents were responding to an anonymous tip about the men taking over the limit of black drum in the Delacroix area and were able to make contact with one of those subjects at a camp. When the agents contacted the other subject, he said he had sold the fish to a local dock. Agents were able to intercept that load of fish and discovered the men caught and sold 50 black drum in 2 days while recreationally fishing. The fish were seized and donated to a local charity. If convicted, the subjects will lose their fishing privileges and shall be barred from participating in any type of recreational fishing for a period of 1 year from the date of conviction plus any fines. And unfortunately, we do have a small thing to tell you about the recent storm that's passed, and our agents are responding for requests from local EMS in Bossier and DeSoto parishes. They're taking EMS and rescue personnel into areas that are only accessible by four-wheel drive trucks. The agents are assisting with welfare checks, traffic, reconnaissance, clearing roads, etc. So far, we have assisted with rescuing 2 subjects from a home that were trapped inside due to a fallen tree. And that concludes the report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I definitely want to commend the department's efforts for Operation Dry Water and keeping us safe through the 4th of July weekend. It's always good to see the number of injuries and fatalities taking a nosedive. It's one time I like to say a nosedive. I
Thank you, sir.
appreciate your efforts. Thank
I
you.
have one question.
Sure.
The red snapper incident, the $350 fine seems low, given the circumstances. I don't know if we set that or the legislature, but in a situation where it's a gross violation, kind of like gross littering versus littering, seems to me that we ought to have something bigger than $350 as far as a fine. And it may not be your category to talk about, but it's just my observation, I guess.
Well, I do happen to agree with you, sir.
Cole, would that be us or the
I
legislature?
was going to say,
Yeah, so the class violations are established by the legislature and the fees associated with them are statutorily mandated.
Then I can't do anything about
But we can agree, right?
it.
Y'all do set civil restitution values, so. for
Yeah, I saw
cases.
that.
all right, thank you, Lieutenant Skinner. Next, we have receive an update on the wild turkey program presented by Mr. Cody. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Appreciate you guys allowing me to be here today. Get my stuff loaded up. Can anybody see that? For a little bit of change of pace, I've got some good news about wild turkeys in Louisiana. Most of the time when I'm up here talking, it's generally kind of bad information, doom and gloom, if some would category it as some would say it was doom and gloom, but anyway, so for a change of pace, I've got a bit of good news I'd like to bring forth to you here today. But real quick before I get to it, just need a little bit of background information for those of you that may not have been aware of where we came from with wild turkeys in Louisiana and some of the things we've done in the past and kind of what we're looking at for the future here. So for population monitoring, we do not have it's very difficult to inventory wild turkeys across the state. They're very secretive, kind of unlike, other game animals where we fly surveys to count waterfowl, or we do a browse survey to determine habitat usage by deer. We don't have a lot of ways to actually inventory populations of wild turkeys. They don't leave a lot of evidence on the landscape. So some of the primary things we use are actually harvest data and harvest rates and research from results from our research studies and things like that. So we utilize harvest in 2 ways. We have 2 different surveys. We have a male/email survey that's been done since the 1980s that we have a harvest estimate from. We also have harvest estimates for a lot of other species. We get hunter effort estimates from that survey as well. And then we have our reported or tag validated harvest data that's been in existence since 2009, when it was required to have and report tags in the state. Another index that we use is our production index, our POLT survey. That's done each year. It's ongoing right now. We're right now beginning the survey period, trying to get an index on how reproduction was for a given year. We want to look at, estimate recruitment into the population. We look at our POLTs per hen. And then we also look at sex ratio, which is males to females in the population from that survey. So just real quick, talk about some of the factors that influence wild turkey reproduction. You know, they're like numerous other ground nesting birds where, you know, the populations are primarily driven by reproductive success from one year to the next. A lot of things impact that. It's a complex equation that we're dealing with. So we don't often have control over a lot of them. And the first one is one of those environmental conditions, precipitation on a given year, precipitation during the nesting and brood rearing season, which are typically the months of April, May, and June. Average temperatures across a region, you know, when we hit these excessive heat waves and stuff like that during critical periods, it could be problematic. Habitat quality is a big one. You know, we realize that habitat quality for turkeys as well as other wildlife throughout the state of Louisiana has kind of waned over the last several decades. And we at the department are working long-term to help improve that through a lot of our programs and divisional staff. So when we're talking about habitat quality for turkeys, we're talking about nesting, brood rearing, and wintering habitat specifically for those, you know, critical periods throughout the year, not just one period. And then, of course, predation is another aspect that impacts reproduction. It's one of those things that can be mitigated somewhat through having good habitat quality, but it's also still out there and impacting the birds. And then specifically what I want to focus on with the rest of this talk is season timing and harvest and how that could potentially have impacts to wild turkey production and population. So these next couple of slides are some data that we used back in the day. I say it's been about 6 years now, if my math is right, 2018, yeah, something like that, to make a season change or an adjustment to our season. But this was some of the trend data that we were looking at that time. This is our estimated turkey harvest from our male survey from 2005 to 2016. You can see a pretty significant declining trend. And this is our estimated number of turkey hunters for that same time period. So you can see a increasing trend. So, you know, of course, a scenario like that could potentially be problematic. And what we looked at doing for the 2018 turkey season, and with the help from Department Commission, were integral part of this and getting it enacted. We moved the season from the fourth Saturday in March until the first Saturday in April. The reasoning for that was to allow more opportunity for more breeding opportunity, hopefully produce more nests on the ground. And we also want to look at a way to do that without removing opportunity for our sportsmen across the state. So again, the objectives were to stabilize our turkey harvest statewide and increase and sustain our turkey populations. We didn't go out on that limb by ourselves. We utilized some recommendations from a group called the Southeast Wild Turkey Working Group, which is a collective group of experts across all the southeastern states. They came forth with some recommended frameworks based on your population levels and what was happening with turkeys in your state. And we kind of went with their recommended framework in the middle, where we adjusted our season closer to what we call the peak of egg laying or nest initiation, where most of your hens start to nest. At that point, a lot of your breeding has been done, and hopefully the stage is set. So when is that for Louisiana? We utilize our research data from our projects to determine that. We've got nest initiation data now for over 400 nests. It's been updated since this slide, so I apologize, but you can see the peak nest initiation or the peak of egg laying for Louisiana occurs around the end of the first week, beginning of the second week of April. April 7th through the 8th, depending on, it kind of fluctuates in between that, depending on each data set from each year. It's important to note these were GPS tracked hens from all of our research projects across the state in both Western Louisiana and Southeastern Louisiana. So it's very much Louisiana data, and it's one of the largest data sets of this size in the U.S. in terms of the type of data we're using and collecting with our GPS tags. So how does that nesting and peak nest initiation line up with our harvest in the state? This is our weekly harvest comparison from 2009 to 2024. I get this data set from our reported harvest, basically breaking it down by week of the season. You can see that nearly 52% of the total harvest has occurred by the end of the first week of the season. So it's very much front end heavy. So in my mind, that says that when that first week of the season occurs, it's pretty important. So if we looked at our turkey harvest relative to peak breeding, assuming that peak breeding is associated with peak egg laying, nest initiation, prior to our season change, we had 63% of our harvest occurring prior to peak breeding, and about 30% of the harvest occurring after that date. So what we looked at from once we made the change is our turkey harvest relative to peak breeding again. It's approximately 15% occurring prior to the peak breeding and approximately 85% after. So we feel like we had a significant impact on that. And the big question is, has it helped? That was a question that I was asked to talk about in 2020 with the commission. And at that time, we did not have a lot of data post-season change, so it was too soon to tell. However, that's not necessarily the case. In 2024, as I stand here before you, and I'll go over in just a second, in my opinion, absolutely it's helped. It's one of the real success stories of managing wildlife, managing populations, hopefully. So these next few slides are going to go over the specific data relative to the two surveys and show the differences between, pre-season change in 2018 and post-season change after 2018. And that is represented by the red line here in your graph. So that is when the season changed. The top data here is our mail survey, our email survey. You can show is from 2009 to 2024. All of these graphs will be during that period because that's when our tag validation data started. Top is our mail survey. Bottom is our reported harvest. So you can see kind of declining trends occurring all the way until that 2018 season, drop in estimated harvest at that time, but kind of all over the map for the mail survey. But the reported harvest down at the bottom is a significantly increasing trend. If we look at our hunter numbers during that same time, this is again based off our mail survey. You can see initially we had a drop in hunter numbers. However, those rebounded here in recent years in 2022, 2023, 2024, although they're not as high as they once were back in around 2011, 2012. So hunter numbers have rebounded in the state based on that survey. And you're looking at the trend line there. Of course, it doesn't account for all of the variation, but it still shows slightly increasing. We're going to take a closer look at our reported harvest, validated harvest from tag data. The red bars here represent that harvest number prior to the season change. The blue bars represent that reported harvest after the season change. You can see the reported harvest kind of maintained itself for a number of years there, and then within the last 3 years has really increased significantly. When you combine that and look at it, we've had over an 80% increase in reported harvest since the 2018 season delay. Now, obviously some other factors have had to line up for this to happen. It's not just all the season delay to season change, but we've had some good environmental conditions for reproduction across the state. I think when you couple those two things together, we really obtained the most benefit as we could from what it is we did. A little bit closer look at that data when we look at it from our wild turkey management regions of the state. We have regions in the Northwest, the North Mississippi Delta, Western Longleaf Pine, the Chaffalay and Lower Miss Delta in the Southeast Loblolly. This next graph is showing that reported harvest data for each of those regions. You can see that we've had exponential increases in the Southeast Loblolly, Northwest Loblolly, shortleaf hardwood region, and the Western longleaf pine. We'd have slight increases in the North Mississippi Delta in terms of reported harvest, but we've had constant lower reported harvest for the Chaffalay, Lower Miss region. Those areas at the bottom, the data that it represents for the North Mississippi Delta and the Chaffalay, Lower Mississippi Delta along the Mississippi River, that's some of our lower quality habitat. It's the wettest of the wet that we have, bottom and hardwood areas. A lot of those areas we've actually had to go into in closed seasons on some of the WMAs that fall within there, like Sherburne Wildlife Management areas. So, and those areas had suffered a lot from the Morganza flood back in 2011, and those populations have yet to rebound from that. So in summary, I'd just like to say that my recommendations to the commission were to maintain our current season structure and regulations, as our harvest and populations keep increasing or sustain these higher levels, and like I said, we continue to promote habitat management, that benefits turkeys across Louisiana. Ultimately, that's going to be the thing that carries us, and sustains us long term. So I feel like that we keep looking at these problems as they arise, and keep addressing them as needed. However, we still need to keep our eye on the end goal, which is to make more and better quality habitat across the state. So with that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Any commissioner questions, concerns, comments?
I have a comment, just, Cody came to the Lake Providence Rotary, about a month or so ago and did a great job. Before I got on the commission closed, turkey season for 3 years in my parish. And, the river's been down the last few years and people are seeing a few turkeys. So I was catching a lot of flack. And, but I could at least say I didn't do it. But Cody came up and did a presentation at Rotary and did a great job. The Rotary ran the parish with me and did a great job. So I appreciate you coming up.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Cody. All right. Sure. Mr. Cody, hang on one second. Hold on. I think
One more.
Mr. Reynolds might want to pick your brain for a second.
Yeah, just one quick question. Over the past, say, 5 or 6 years and I'm in Northwest Louisiana up around Dubberly, and we have some property there, and we would see, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 turkeys. But then we had a lot of pigs come in.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see as many now.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's probably
Well,
what's knocking the population down, maybe? I mean, we still see turkeys, but we just don't see like we did.
there's a lot of unknowns out there about, the exact impact of predators on, and it kind of varies case by case depending on the habitat base and the type of
Right.
habitat you're in. There's been a lot of work done on nest predation and feral pigs and whether they have an impact or not. And the results, a lot of that has been kind of all over the place, but for the most part, we don't think that feral pigs break the huddle in the morning and go looking for turkey nests to eat. They eat them opportunistically,
Yeah.
as they find them. But to me, the biggest impact feral hogs have, and the hardest part of that to quantify, is on the wintering habitat, just like they do for white-tailed deer. They're in the same hardwood bottoms eating acorns as a lot of other wildlife, turkeys and deer included are. And when you're consuming those resources that are normally available for those other species, how is that impacting, turkey body condition going into the nesting period? So those are a lot of the unknowns that a lot of our researchers are trying to focus on, but it's really hard to pin down, So I guess to answer your question specifically, I'd be more inclined to want to take a look at it and see before I said yes or no, up or down. Obviously if it's a extreme problem, then yes. If you're seeing hog rooting everywhere you go.
Yeah, they're coming in quite a bit. Well, we could tell that they were eating, the hogs would get in there and eat the acorns as soon as they hit the ground.
Right. Yeah.
So we've been, lately, I've been planting about 20 acres of a turkey mix.
Mhm.
Has a lot of brown top millet and different things in it. Pigs don't get in there so bad with that. So hopefully over the next couple of years, they increase the habitat there.
Yes, sir. Yeah, no doubt.
Thank you.
And I also would say where I grew up in the Southeast, we didn't have turkeys when I was there.
Mhm.
So thank you and the department for all the work that's been done, that my generation and generations to come. Good job.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Cody, before I let you go, I understand we do have a pretty significant rule change happening with turkey season upcoming.
Yes,
About-
restriction on,
You want to give us a quick rundown on what this might be?
basically what was passed here recently was a restriction on Jake harvest, juvenile male, restriction on the harvest of juvenile males. It's kind of unknown as to how that exactly is going to translate and affect populations here in Louisiana. But it's certainly not going to hurt anything. And a lot of our hunters were in support of that. And so what we're looking at moving forward is probably increased and better hunting quality in terms of the number of adult males that make it into the population, the next year's population carry over per se.
Sure.
But as far as an increase in the population, I just don't know, because our data indicates that there's a really low harvest rate on juvenile males anyway. About 90% of them are surviving to the next year anyhow. So you're only affecting a portion of, of
Sure.
10% of that. So it's certainly not a bad thing, and we don't know exactly how good a thing it is. So is that an answer to your question? So
Certainly. So the no Jakes rule will start with this upcoming.
it'll start in
season,
2025. Yes, sir.
2025.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So Commissioner Reynolds, are you seeing more bear?
We're gonna leave turkeys and bears for a minute, and now we're gonna move to, I believe we have a presentation of a final report from Ducks Unlimited on waterfowl breeding grounds funded project, and we have Howie Singer from Ducks Unlimited Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Thanks everybody else, all the commissioners for having us here today.
Oh,
Okay, so I'm Howie Singer. We're at Ducks Unlimited Canada. I've been there 9 years, and most of you have seen Dave Kosterski standing here in this place before. And Dave and I are kind of in a transition period this year, and I'll be overseeing the fall flights program, which I'll talk about a little bit here today, and then more so another month for the proposal. And before I get into the report on FY24, I'd like to talk a little bit about the funding mechanism. I imagine most of you are aware of this, but I'd just like to kind of give a brief background on this. So the AFWA, Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, created a program to help fund habitat conservation to essentially produce more ducks and to maintain populations at long-term averages. So currently the AFWA goal set in 2021, it was reaffirmed in 2021, was to contribute, have all the states, all over 48 states, contribute $10 million annually to Canadian habitat conservation. That $10 million would then be matched with an equal amount of non-federal dollars. Then in turn, those dollars would be used to leverage NACA. So basically $1 could become $4. Then with the exchange rate, about $5.25 for Canadian habitat conservation. So this mechanism has been in place since 1991, and it's just been kind of the background to get money to Canada for habitat conservation. And then Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries has contributed over $12.8 million. It's just shy of $12.9 million. And Louisiana is one of the first states, I believe it was South Carolina and Ohio in 1965, decided to send money to Canada for habitat conservation work. So thank you for your really long-term partnership and significant contributions. And overall, collectively, this program has invested over $2 billion in habitat conservation. This next slide will talk a little bit about kind of now the delivery mechanism and where and the reason why we're doing habitat conservation and how we distribute that across the landscape of Prairie Canada. So this picture here, this is clipped out from the Prairie Habitat Joint Venture. So this is a multi-agency joint venture that basically is built around the North American Waterfowl Management Plan, which has set goals, again, to kind of maintain waterfowl populations at long-term averages to produce ducks for everybody in North America for hunting opportunities and bird viewing opportunities. So as you can see, it's a massive area. It's 190.3 million acres, just that lower part there in the lighter green. That's the prairie parklands and prairie grasslands. It breeds over 1/3 of the continental waterfowl population. And you can see just a massive area, over 12 million wetlands, 13.5 million ducks on average. So we have this massive area to deliver habitat conservation. And with Louisiana funds, we've dedicated those to the province of Saskatchewan, which typically breeds about 60% plus or minus a few birds every year in the prairies. Manitoba a little lower than Alberta's a little bit higher. So now I'll get into some slides just to summarize what has been accomplished in FY24 with Louisiana funds and match funds. And then my last slide will be a summary for the past 3 years, which this grant proposal was for. This last year, the contract amount was $165,000 US. So then, as I mentioned, that would be matched 1-for-1 with non-federal dollars. We use that to access NACA. became 663,000 US. And then this last year, the exchange gain was averaged at 1.3. So 862,000 Canadian dollars for habitat conservation. In Louisiana, the specific funds there were used for conservation easements. So I'll just touch a little bit on what those are. Those are long-term conservation easements that Ducks Unlimited Canada has with a particular landowner. So we'll come to a landowner, pay a certain amount of fair market value, and then we'll put a perpetual easement on the title of that land. So if that land's sold in the future, nobody can, they're considered no break, no drain easements. So all the wetlands will be conserved in perpetuity, and same with the uplands. So the uplands will be the nesting habitat that the birds utilize for nesting. Also the overwater stuff too for overwater nesting species. So that's how we spent Louisiana dollars specifically in FY24. And that would fall under habitat protection. So the protection component there, any program we have under protection is a minimum of 10 years. Some of the programs are in perpetuity, some are 10-year agreements, but they have to be a minimum of 10 years. And then upland restoration, those are programs where we work also with landowners to restore habitat. And then habitat management, we have a huge portfolio of land across the provinces, and we have to maintain habitat there to maximize the return on investment for waterfowl on those habitats. So this is the high level, these are called the initiatives, and then later on I'll show kind of at the program level how we've delivered across this last year. This slide here highlights one of the conservation easements that we spent Louisiana dollars on last year. So this is the Hajirtas Conservation Easement in Southeast Saskatchewan. And the map there you can see is what we call a thunderstorm map. So that shows the number of breeding pairs per square mile across landscapes, which are considered target landscapes. So there's landscapes in each of the provinces that have these higher densities of breeding waterfowl. And that's where the Prairie Habitat Joint Venture has said, this is where you get the most return on your investment, delivering program within these areas. And then within these areas, you can see kind of the lowest is that 21 to 30 pairs per square mile. And then the red, the smaller stuff there, that's your highest 60 plus pairs per square mile. So this conservation easement is kind of right on that 31 to 40, 41 to 50 pairs per square mile. And this is how we would determine, okay, hey, this is where it makes sense to spend conservation dollars to get the most return on the investment. This just shows the landscape of Saskatchewan and then where the Hajirtas conservation easement is. So that's down in the southeast corner there near the Manitoba border. And you can see there's a massive amount of target landscapes. All of those highlighted areas there are where a program can be delivered following the PHGV. And the PHGV makes recommendations on what types of conservation programs to deliver would provide the most benefit to hatch nest, which is kind of the metric that the PHGV uses to see if we're maintaining or keeping close to long-term waterfowl averages. And as I mentioned, 60% of breeding ducks in Prairie Canada are typically from Saskatchewan. So you can see it's a massive area of the province there where there are high densities of breeding waterfowl. And then that's just kind of a typical, more permanent prairie wetland right there. Tough to see, there's a few birds on it. I think this might have been from one of the conservation easements where Louisiana dollars were used in FY24. So this gets into a little bit more of the detail of the different programs that we offer. And I'll go into a little bit of detail on these, and I will present more of the detail on these programs next month when I show the proposal for the next 3 years. So purchase long-term hold. That's a program there where Ducks Unlimited will go out and purchase a piece of land in a landscape, and we'll hold that long-term. We have the title of that. We can manage that land how we want. So we'll restore all wetlands. If wetlands were broken or drained, we'll put easements on there, and that'll be kind of there in perpetuity. And Ducks Unlimited lands in Canada are all open to hunting and fishing and recreation, just non-motorized use only. And then conservation easements, I kind of touched on that one a little bit. The revolving land purchase is kind of those top two tied together. Basically, Ducks Unlimited will buy land that's in really high risk areas where it's harder to do conservation easements. Landowners are less reluctant to allow us to do easements, but we can buy a piece of land we can fix the wetlands, repair the uplands, put conservation easements on it, and then turn around and sell that to cattle producers. And cattle producers are the folks we work most with, but not exclusively. And then in turn, hopefully they're staying on the landscape, and having cattle means you're going to have grass, means you're going to have wetlands, means you're going to have ducks. So then going down easements from RLP, that kind of ties into that revolving land purchase, just putting the conservation easements on there. Those happen at different years. That's why it's on different line items. Then the rangeland conservation agreement, that's where we've worked with landowners who already have forage for cattle on the landscape. We want to ensure that land stays as it is. So we'll pay them a one-time fee for a 10-year agreement to maintain that land as is. That maintains the wetlands and the uplands on the landscape. And then lease conservation agreements. So we'll actually go out and lease a piece of land. This is kind of try to get your foot in the door with a landowner who's maybe, you know, not ready to sign off their land to a conservation easement yet, but we'll just go out and we'll lease that land for 10 years, and then we can put it into a forage, maintain the wetlands on there, make sure it's available for at least 10-year minimum. So that's kind of the summary of the habitat protection portfolio. And then the upland restoration, so conservation forages, that kind of ties in with one of the protection programs. So we'll protect that land. And some of those lands will be cultivated landscapes, annually cultivated. So canola, wheat, barley, peas, oats, all that kind of stuff. That's not really beneficial for breeding waterfowl in Canada. Sure, it's great for the fall time, but there's an excessive amount of fall food. So we'll go in, we'll convert those annual crop lands to forages again for 10 years. And we actually pay the landowners to do that. And that's maintained for 10 years. Nesting cover enhancement, very similar to the conservation forages, but we use a different blend of plant species, and that's on lands that Ducks Unlimited has control over. So that's lands we purchased or lands that we're going to do the revolving land purchase on, and we can just kind of do our own blend that maximizes the benefit for waterfowl. And then habitat enhancement, that's the winter wheat. So that's just an annual one-time small amount per acre to landowners. Winter wheat has been shown to be 24 times more productive for breeding waterfowl, particularly pintail, and also other species of waterfowl. It's seeded in the fall. It germinates earlier in the spring. They're not going in seeding through there. So you've got this kind of early emergence of growth for breeding waterfowl. And then habitat management, again, that's the stuff that we've kind of manage ourselves on our own lands. And so the last slide here on the last 3 years now is just kind of summarizing 3 of our bigger programs that were just on that last slide. So acquisition, that's purchase and long-term hold, conservation easement, and forage restoration. So here are the 3 bars for each of those categories. We have proposed is in blue. The accomplished is kind of the middle bar there in orange. And then the other one, lighter orange, is the cost per acre. So you can see that we've achieved everything that we had kind of set out we're going to do. And it's a little bit more difficult sometimes on a 3-year proposal to do that, just kind of not knowing what the landscape's going to be, finance is going to be, but we were able to kind of meet all of the goals that we had set out to do, and a little bit under the cost per acre that we had thought we would be able to do it for. And that it's going to vary annually. Sometimes, you know, a property, say if a purchase, you know, average price is $1,500 per acre, there might be an opportunity to buy something for 900, or, you know, all of a sudden everything goes up to 18 or 1900. So the cost is going to go up per acre. So we just try to think about that when we're putting together proposals. And so this is my last slide here. And as I mentioned, Ducks Unlimited and the LWF, we've accomplished a great deal in almost 60 years of partnerships. And we really feel that partnerships like this have to continue for the benefit of waterfowl for everybody in North America. So I'd just like to say thank you to the LWF and everybody in this room for allowing us to come down here in this great partnership. And I hope it continues for many years to come. I look forward to meeting everybody here on the commission as well. Thank you.
Thank you. If you hold tight just for a second, any commissioner questions, comments on this presentation?
I'll be around too afterwards for a few, so I can meet everybody.
Thank you.
The pairs per square mile.
Sure.
You were talking about, is that even in drought years, where do they go? When, if you have that many pairs per square mile, it has to fluctuate during drought years and different things, I would think.
Yeah, this would be your average pairs per square mile. So there's some hypotheses that birds will bypass the prairies and go to the boreal. That's never been proven yet. Like, so basically, if the prairies are completely dry, birds are gonna go up to the boreal and reproduce there. The boreal is less productive typically for waterfowl in the prairies, just due to like the composition of the landscape. So this year's a really interesting one. Jason was up in probably early May on a tour of all the projects that we've delivered on the past couple of years, and it was extremely dry. Yeah, it was pretty dry in May, below average. And then since then, the prairies have been just inundated with water. So, you know, the thought is this first nesting attempt for waterfowl might have been poor, but if birds were around, and birds will come back down, we have some data that suggests they'll go to the boreal and come back. So second, third repeat nesting attempts were likely much stronger this year for some species, probably for most species.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, next, we will have a presentation of the final report by Delta Waterfowl on waterfowl breeding grounds funded project. And we have Mr. Brian Leach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commission and staff. I am here today, very excited to present our fiscal year 24 report to the commission here called Adopt a Pothole. We're extremely grateful for our continued support and successful breeding habitat conservation relationship with LWF. And this relationship has resulted in a extremely high quality, low cost acquisition and perpetual duck breeding wetlands and associated wetlands for many, many years. So we're very excited to show you all what we have done with the investment outline. Uh-oh.
He's coming to you.
I got it, I think. All right.
We're gonna, let me do this. I'm gonna restart you here.
All right, sorry about that. The outline we're going to show, I got a good bit of slides. I'm going to run through them pretty quickly. If y'all have any questions at the end, just the outline shows you what all we're going to cover. My name is Brian Leach. I've been with Delta for 14 years. I'm out of Lake Charles, Louisiana. I've worn many hats. I'm currently a director over the South region for Delta Waterfowl and filling in today for John Davis. So glad to be here with you all. This is our delivery partner, which is Manitoba Habitat Conservancy. This is the CEO, Stephen Carlisle, who Jason met during his visit. He's also a member of the Prairie Habitat Joint Venture Board, National Wetlands Conservation Council, and Fall Flights Advisory Committee. Our pillars at Delta Waterfowl are duck production, habitat conservation research, and hunter are three. Our mission is to produce ducks and secure the future of waterfowl hunting. And our vision is abundant waterfowl and endless opportunities for ducks. Our primary constituent is the North American duck hunter. This just goes to show you how big a deal MHC is in Manitoba, the holder of the largest number of conservation easements in Manitoba, top Manitoba delivery organization, and largest pool of donated lands and conservation interest of 65,000+ acres in Manitoba. MHC Trust also delivers on several different initiatives with over 10 million on the landscape managed each year, and also addresses the health of watershed, soil, wildlife, and the social aspects of human-wildlife interaction. Delta MHC partnership began in 1998. MHC Boost on the ground delivery focused, and we are the grassroots support and the U.S. funding source. Partners in conservation shows you all our different partners in conservation. there. And I just wanted to, this slide, I wanted to show you all, got some slides in here just to show you all where our ducks come from. These are ducks that were harvested in Louisiana that were banded in Canada. And this just to point out spatial diversity, which you chose last time to diversify funding for projects in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And just to show you where those purple dots are really, really good and a lot of ducks. So it just goes to show you there's a lot that come from Manitoba as well. Spatial diversity also of the investment is really good for wet years and dry years. In this, on this drought monitor shows a really, I don't know if y'all remember the 2013, 14, 15 season, but I do. It was really wet up there. Basins were full everywhere, as you can see on this drought monitor. And then in 2020, spatial diversity is important because basins are full somewhere. You can see it's dry in parts of Saskatchewan and really wet in Manitoba. And this is just the opposite in 2023. As you can see, it was dry in parts of Saskatchewan and wet in parts of Saskatchewan and dry in Manitoba. On the dry years, basins are dry everywhere, which is not good for ducks. Ducks, just for those that don't know, they need a lot of, when it's really wet up there, water floods into the cattails and the vegetation where they're able to have successful breeding. Nest success and brood survival is really good on the really wet years. So production is really good on the wet years versus not very good on the dry years. 2024 breeding conditions. This just goes to show you why we focus a lot of our attention to the breeding ground. 75% of the mortality occurs on the breeding grounds with nest success, duckling survival, and nesting hen survival. This is a study that we have actually a DU study from 2003, Hockman study that a lot of, I know a lot of things were determined in the study and really goes to show you why we focus on the PPR. The 24 breeding conditions, as was discussed earlier, it was really dry early. We had no snow coming out of the winter. There was no snow on the ground. Rains came, but late, probably suffered a little bit of flyover because of that. And, but because of the late rain and lots of moisture, duckling survival and re-nesting efforts probably were really good. This is just going to show you some precipitation maps. This was 80-day % average precipitation that shows it started to get better, especially in a lot of parts of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And then the 90-day % of average precipitation really shows you that we got a lot of moisture in the late spring months. This one is a departure from average. Just goes to show you the average is above normal, and 90-day departure from average even got better through the late spring, early winter months. This is a moisture map of the Dakotas from January to March that shows you how dry it was. There was no moisture on the ground whatsoever. And then this moisture map from April to June shows you how wet it got really fast. So that was really, really good for re-nesting and brood survival. So let's get into the update of your breeding Habitat Manitoba investment. In 2022, the commission awarded and the department awarded Delta 25% of this contract, in which we are very appreciative of and thankful for the opportunity, and believe that we delivered really well. And I'll go on to cover that. And our financial summary here shows that LWF, we received $55,000. We matched that with MHC, and we doubled that up with NACA for a 4-to-1 match of $221,000. The accomplishment in acres was a total of 248 acres, which produce a cost per an acre of $889 per an acre. The fiscal year 24 accomplishments goes on to show you on the map where all these were. You can see the dots, the multicolored dots. They're in different areas of the PHJV target landscape, which produce on average, 40 to 50 pairs per square mile. The first conservation easement is called Warrington. It's 35 acre wetland in the Minnedosa Shoal PHJV target landscape area, where the breeding densities are, like I said, 41 to 50 pairs per square mile, and 2 wetlands were restored. That was funded separately of this funding in that conservation easement. The second one is English conservation easement. This is in the Minnedosa Shoal PHJV area. It protects smaller wetland basins that are highest risk in Manitoba because they are easy to drain and farm. And this was the first conservation easement for this family, and they are interested in further easements. The Gillis Conservation Easement is north of Alexander Griswold PHGV target area. It's part of the Glenboro Marsh. And I know the Glenboro Marsh has been identified as a priority marsh under the 21-25 PHJV implementation plan. So a very important marsh area where this conservation easement is. And then the last one is a 131 acre conservation easement in the Minnedosa Shoal PHJV target area. It's the second conservation easement signed with these landowners. And it's surrounded by good crop agriculture, and it also includes a 9.6 acre semi-permanent wetland, which are really good for breeding waterfowl. So overall, the LWF project accomplishments of 22-24, over the financial summary, we were given the 25% investment of $180,583. Which equated after our matches on a 4-to-1 match of over 900,000 invested in waterfowl habitat in Manitoba. And it all starts with Louisiana, and thanks to Louisiana for funding that. Overall accomplishments, we had which we were very proud of, we ended up producing 1,226 acres, which was over our projected acreage of 870 acres, and which equated to a cost per an acre of $749 per an acre. It's also important I wanted to note that we understand that the 21 resolution made it very clear that all LDWF dollars must be utilized solely for the purpose of perpetual acquisition. Not only did all the LDWF dollars go to perpetual easement and acquisition, but we adhered to the resolution for the balance of all matching funds, as well as to ensure that all dollars during the funding cycle were used solely as directed for the purpose of perpetual acquisition. And my last slide is just a sincere thank you to all of you and the department. This relationship has been a fruitful, enjoyable, and trusted one. We appreciate the decades of partnership and look forward to seeing you again in August as you consider the next cycle. Thank you for your continued trust and partnership. We sincerely appreciate it from everyone at Delta Waterfowl. And I also wanted to mention I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our national expo. We chose Baton Rouge as the host site this year. It's at the last weekend of this month, July 26th to July 28th. We're very excited. We're expecting over 30,000 people to attend, and it's something that's really being put together and going to be pretty special. So and certainly invite all of you to please come check it out at the River Center. And it's going to be a weekend full of waterfowl celebration of all our successes and a big celebration of the duck hunting community of Louisiana. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any commissioner questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Leach. And that conference is what days again?
Friday, July 26th through July 28th.
And
It's
here about-
deltawaterfowlexpo.com if anybody wants to check it
Thank
out.
you. Great. Ms. Susan, do I have any public comments? I do not have any public comments. Yes, sir.
It's down on-
Chairman, I do have a question. Recently, with the licensing restructure, we had some issue, we had a certain amount of money that was going to this. I think Brian may have an update for us that the money is gonna go up some because they had some kind of way left something out. So I think it was done this year. Please inform us on that, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Yes, sir. When we originally did the license restructure, $10 from every duck license would go into the duck stamp fund. And that money would be split 50% on Louisiana projects versus the breeding grounds in Canada. What we did this past year was change that so for a resident license, that meant most of the money was going in there, but for your 5-day, which is a 35, or your annual non-resident, which is a $50 license, that money, only $10 was going into that account. This year, Jerome Zarang ran a bill to put 100% of those dollars into that account. So we're anticipating the fiscal note on that almost doubles what's going into the account. So about $400,000 went in last year, the fiscal note. So hopefully we're anticipating it to be closer to 800,000 into the future. So as these proposals come in August, this year is going to be based on that lower number, but we're hoping to see an increase in those dollars that could be dedicated to the fall flights and the breeding ground, adopt a pothole, and those programs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClinton. All right. Any other comments? None? All right. With that said, I'll entertain item number 12, motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
I got a motion by Commissioner Segura, a second by Commissioner Blanchard. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.